We have this banger of a main event coming up for UFC 326 in early March of next year. We have Holloway versus Oliveira 2, and this is a banger fight, guys. I'm so excited for this fight, and this is probably my most anticipated fight for early 2026 so far. Probably it's gonna be for like the number two contendership for the belt at lightweight. That's my assumption. The whole landscape of lightweight depends totally on whether or not Ilya is gonna have the belt or not. And yeah, so I'm just gonna give my early prediction for this fight, and I'm just gonna come out and say it, guys. I think Max is gonna beat Charles Oliveira probably by TKO in like round 3 or 4, and this is why. So I think that Max is just too fast at lightweight. His last fight with Dustin Poirier was extremely telling to me, and the fact that he was able to completely speed Mog Dustin Poirier, skirt around on the outside, come into the pocket with nasty hooks, body shots, uppercuts, and just destroy Poirier. Like it wasn't insanely dominant. I don't want to say destroy, but he dominantly beat Poirier. It was like a 49-46. Maybe you could give round 2 to Poirier because Poirier, dropped him and like was in full guard, raining down shots at the end of the round. But even then, Max Holloway had beaten up Dustin Poirier in the early half of that round, dropped him, hurt him badly, had him on like wobbly legs, wobbly hips. Like, if you wanted, you could argue that Max 50-45 Poirier in that last outing. And I was extremely impressed. And he looked fast against Gagey too, but I kind of expected that. Like, Gagey's kind of he's pretty stationary, he's kind of slow. And I know he's a good boxer, but he's not the most technical. He's kind of just a slugger and trips over himself swinging these huge, powerful overhands and big hooks. And he's not the fastest. So I totally did expect Max to like outstrike him in many moments and be able to just find the mark on his chin just because of how much faster Max would be coming up from featherweight compared to Gage's kind of generally slow style at lightweight. But I totally expected I didn't expect him to just speed mog Poirier like that. I expected Poirier to be able to keep up with Max in terms of the boxing. Maybe Max would be marginally faster than Poirier at times, but I thought Poirier would be able to just find shots as well. And that just wasn't the case. Poirier wasn't able to get going at all on the feet. And he had some moments just by virtue of him being a good boxer and finding the timing of Max at moments. But Max has this like weird shifty footwork that's able to, where he's able to avoid big shots and he's great at circling. And I think that it's going to work super well against someone like Oliveira. Um, Oliveira is like he's a bit plotty, and I don't want to say that like he has horrible footwork. He's like some heavyweight guy like Tai Tuivasa. That's not the case at all. Oliveira is a good striker, but he's a bit plotty in terms of just coming forward. His footwork works best when obviously he's just advancing and he can back you up past that black line and tee off and find big shots when you're like nervous and you're not trying to get hit by him and you're like mainly playing defensive. And in moments like that, he's able to walk down his opponents and cut off the cage well and find them on the chin. But um, I just don't see that happening to Max. Max is going to circle away. I don't see him getting just held up or like backed up to the cage and getting. He will take some big shots by Oliveira probably at some point, but it won't be enough to finish the fight. And yeah, the other component of this fight is, I guess, just the ground game. Oliveira has looked great in his last fight. We saw him destroy Gamrot, but one thing about that Gamrot fight was just he got tagged cleanly. Like I think Gamrot might have slightly even outlanded Oliveira, just in terms of just like he was just backing up and landing shots on Oliveira, and Oliveira would just walk through like a Chad and just like walk him down and pick him up and slam him and then subbed him. Like that was the story of the fight, and it was dominant. But it just showed that Oliveira, like he's not like improving defensively at all. Like he just didn't care, and like stylistically, it's gonna work amazing against a guy like Gamrot who isn't putting away anyone. He's not doing anyone like anything to anyone on the feet, and he's there to get hit. Like he's gonna try to advance against Max, and Max is gonna be moving out of the way, pinging Oliveira's head around, being able to duck under shots and land like 3 or 4 of his own in these fast combinations. And it's just going to be too much for Oliveira. Like, we saw Oliveira just plot into range against Taporia, who had already established his jab, and just get knocked out. And, like, he's not going to have that awareness that, like, oh shit, like, a big shot is coming. And Max is too fast to, like, he's going to be working and striking way too fast for Oliveira to just comprehend. And I'm not saying it's going to be a complete wash and a complete destruction because Oliveira has that ground game, right? Which I just mentioned. And I am a little bit worried for Max in that front, but I'm not super worried because I don't see Max getting held down. Like, you can argue all you want that Max Holloway has never fought like a grappler to the level of Charles Oliveira in most of his career, but he did fight Volk 3 times. He has 75 minutes of cage time against Volk, and that's plenty of time against a high level elite wrestler. And there are those who are going to say, like, oh, yeah, like, what kind of. Like Volk isn't really an elite wrestler. Like what kind of elite wrestler is Volk? But he is though. Like if you think about it, it's just how good his striking is. And that kind of overshadows his wrestling. But like we saw him completely wrestle fuck and destroy Yair Rodriguez. We saw him do that to Brian Ortega, and we saw him utilize that same wrestling against Max Holloway, and he was never able to hold Max down, ever get him into like full guard or something like that. We never saw him like be able to tee off or do anything on the ground in terms of grappling success to Max Holloway. And I think that's basically a big indicator on why Max isn't getting held down against someone like Charles. I would pick Arman because of how solid Arman's wrestling and control is to probably hold down Oliveira Max Holloway if the two ever fought. But I don't see Oliveira doing that to Max Holloway, and I don't see him like. I can see him maybe taking the back at some point, but I think Max would be able to defend, and I don't think Oliveira is able to kind of control Max on the ground for any significant period of time. And my final point is this: I don't trust Charles's chin. Like I wouldn't trust Charles to be able to walk through enough shots of Max Holloway to be able to like land anything big or land anything significant. And I think that even if he like tries to come in to range to either shoot a takedown or like box in the pocket, Max is going to be landing so many shots before Charles can even think of like landing anything. And that's just going to be at some point he's going to get tagged up enough. There's going to be one shot that's clean enough to where he's going to get dropped, and I think at that point he's going to get finished and TKO'd. But yeah, I think that the other outcome, the most likely outcome if Charles were to beat Max, it would be by finish, and I don't think it would be by sub. I think it would be Charles TKOing Max. It could be by sub, but I think it would start with Oliveira finding a big shot on Max because that can always happen. Oliveira's an amazing finisher. He can always get you on the feet, and he's a long guy with a pretty long reach. He's going to have that reach advantage over Max, and if he can find the mark on Max's chin, because Max's chin isn't the best anymore, and we saw him get dropped by Poirier, we saw him get dropped by Gaethje, Oliveira can always land something big on Max, and if that were to happen, he could drop him, sting him, and then on the ground, he could probably TKO Max as well, or sub him. Like, he could sub Max if Max was hurt enough, but I just think that's a very unlikely outcome. I would pick way more on the chances of Max Holloway being able to TKO Oliveira, which I think is going to happen. But yeah, that's just my prediction on the fight. I love both these fighters. I don't know who to root for in this fight, but unfortunately for Oliveira, I am going for Max. This is my early prediction. It might change, but I don't think it will. And I'll talk more about this later when we get closer to the fight. But yeah, this is just my early prediction. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments below. I know a lot of people are picking Oliveira just because of how good he looked against Gamrot. So let me know what you guys think, if you agree, if you disagree. But yeah, excited for this fight, and I'll see you guys next time.